Hello everyone, before we get started today, we have a very exciting announcement to make. We've made a Patreon!
If you'd like to further support our channel, you'll get access to some specialty rewards, including a private Discord.
By joining our Patreon, you'll allow us to continue to increase the quality and frequency of our videos.
Click the link in the corner of the video or the link in the description to check it out.
Now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Hello everyone, the floodgates are open, and we are back with some Darksiders lore. We've got a decent backlog to work through, so we're going to start things this week with an overall timeline for the Darksiders franchise, as requested by Azim Johnny, the Lightbringer 666, Razi Avermescu, and Alpha Peacemaker.
So at this point, the Darksiders franchise consists of 3 games, 2 sets of comics, and a full novel. We're going to go over things in chronological order. As a quick note, since this is the overall timeline of the entire Darksiders series, we're going to be touching briefly on a lot of points we've gone over in more depth in other videos. So rather than telling you to click a gray eye in the corner every 5 seconds, we're just going to put a link to our Darksiders Lore playlist in the description. You're welcome. Now, Untold Eons before the game, comics, or books began, life was born in the universe. 2 of the most important civilizations to rise were the Angels of Heaven and the Demons of Hell. These 2 civilizations have also been locked in an endless war since effectively the beginning of their 2 races. Somewhere along the way, a powerful demoness, Lilith, learned how to create life from a maker she had seduced. Using this knowledge, Lilith combined the essences of both demon and angel, mingling them together to create the very first Nephilim, the race to which the 4 Horsemen, the protagonists of the Darksiders series, belong. For a long but indeterminate period, the Nephilim crusaded across the cosmos, burning worlds and civilization to ash in their wake as they searched for a home. But eventually 4 of their number grew weary of the slaughter and came to recognize the threat that their people posed to the balance of creation. Resultantly, these 4 made a pact with the Charred Council, a group charged by the creator itself with maintaining balance in the universe. In exchange for incredible power, they would act as the Council's enforcers, protecting the balance, and their first act as Horsemen was to destroy the entirety of the rest of their race. Thus begins the story of the 4 Horsemen: war, fury, death, and strife.
Now, the chronology of events after the slaughter of the Nephilim gets a little slushy before the games. The book and the comics all take place before any of the games, with the novel taking place in nebulous eons before the games, and the comics each containing flashbacks to events taking place well before the games, but giving no clear time frames. There's little hard evidence to suggest which events took place, save for one clue that was pointed out to us that is difficult to dispute: War's prosthetic arm. War's comic, Darksiders the Graphic Adventure, primarily takes place later in the timeline, just before the first game. However, there is a flashback that details the events that led to the loss of War's arm. In those scenes, we also see that the Horsemen all have their mounts, which we see them acquire in Death's Door comics. A full body shot of War can be seen in Death's comics, and while the state of the arm in question could be argued either way, the presence of the horse's special mounts when War loses his arm in War's comics cannot, giving a solid placement for the ordering of these events. Less clear is the placement of the book. War is never specifically described as having or not having his prosthetic arm in the book. However, he is pictured with the prosthetic on the book's cover, and on more than one occasion he is described as using his left arm, which would be the prosthetic arm, to shield himself. Now, it should be noted that War is very specifically described as being powerfully armored within this book, tanking hits with his armor as often as dodging things, so this isn't the strongest evidence to work with, but since we have no other clear leads, we're placing the novel after these other 2 events in the timeline.
Meaning that the early chronology looks like this. After being appointed the riders of the Charred Council, the 4 Horsemen traveled to the realm of the far fields and earned their phantom horses. Ruin for war, despair for death, rampage for fury, and an as-yet unknown steed for strife. Presumably, this took place before the genocide of the Nephilim, as all visual indications of that battle show the Horsemen on their mounts. Sometime later, War, overcome with battle lust due to the influence of his sword Chaos Eater, ignored the council and butchered his way across a battlefield or 3, until eventually the other 3 Horsemen were sent to bring him to heel. Things devolved into a fight during which War stabbed Death and then had his arm cut off thanks to the combined efforts of Death and Fury. After this, War is fitted with the massive stone gauntlet-looking prosthetic which he wears in all known depictions of him. At some point after this, Death went on a 500-year hiatus, returning to work for the Council during the events of the Abomination Vault novel. During the novel, it would be revealed that the Nephilim created horrific WMDs known as the Grand Abominations to aid in their conquest of creation, and that Death had come up with the plan to create them in the first place. This was all revealed when a rogue angel and maker duo began collecting Grand Abominations. Subsequently, War and Death were sent by the Charred Council to take care of the situation. The two horsemen would eventually succeed, encountering a handful of important characters along the way. War would also end up detonating a magic nuke while standing next to it, despite the fact that he should have had no conceivable reason to believe the blast wouldn't affect him.
Nebulous eons later, we get to the meat of the Death's Door comics. The majority of the Death's Door comics take place in 1722 AD. During the events of the comics, Death is contacted by Abaddon, a high-ranking angelic general, and asked to discreetly kill a demon that has snuck over to Earth. Earth, by this point, had been declared a sort of general no-fly zone, with the Charred Council having long since forced Heaven and Hell to abide by a peace treaty until the humans of Earth had evolved to the point that they could contend on equal footing with the other two. This will be important shortly. Because of this treaty, angels and demons were not allowed to set foot on Earth, meaning Abaddon couldn't chase the creature down, hence his reason for asking for Death's aid. Death agreed, and since this wasn't a council-sanctioned mission, quietly and covertly made his way to Earth to deal with the threat, which he then discovered was actually an angel, not a demon. Though Death didn't know it at the time, this angel would be the first being infected by corruption that he would ever encounter. After slaying her, he returned to Abaddon, made it clear he thought Abaddon had played him, and then went about his business.
Which leads us to the last pre-game materials. The meat of the Darksiders the Graphic Adventure comic. The majority of the comic touches briefly upon two events. First, the Charred Council, seemingly feeling the stirrings of chaos within the angelic and demonic ranks, sends the four horsemen to make rounds between heaven and hell and remind all the power players that the treaty is to stand, or those that break it will suffer the wrath of the council and its enforcers, the four horsemen. The only stop on the list we see is when the horsemen head to Samael's place. Samael is arguably either the most powerful demon in hell or the second most powerful demon in hell, and one of the craftiest beings we as an audience have been introduced to across the entire series. They inform him that the treaty is to stand, as was their mandate, and Lilith, who was with Samael at the time, suggests that they look to Abaddon, the angelic general, if they seek warmongers. The focus then shifts to Abaddon himself, pleading before a massive council of angels to be given leave to go to war with Hell. His plea is refused, since such an act would violate the Charred Council's treaty, and afterwards he is shown conspiring with another angel, Azrael, and the Maker Ulthane. We aren't given the details of their plan until Darksiders 1, but the three of them set a plan in motion with the goal of routing Hell in a single go. The peace treaty between Heaven and Hell involved 7 mystical seals. Each played some part in summoning and notifying creation of the End War's arrival, with the final seal, the 7th seal, summoning the four horsemen to the field. Abaddon and company's plan was to destroy the first 6 seals, summoning Hell's leaders to Earth for the battle, but not calling the horsemen. Ulthane would then reforge the 6 seals so no one would be the wiser, and Abaddon and his armies would descend upon the demons on Earth, wiping out Hell's leaders, all while claiming that the demons had breached the treaty.
Almost none of that went as planned. Ulthane reforged the seals, but everything else went sideways. Lilith somehow caught wind of Abaddon's plan and took advantage of it, meaning that the forces of Hell that arrived on Earth were far stronger than Abaddon was prepared for. But additionally, the Charred Council also learned of his treachery. However, the council was certain that since Abaddon had hidden proof of his actions via the reforging of the seals, that the horsemen would see any action against Abaddon as unjust, so they made a plan. They sent War to Earth in the middle of the battle between the angels and demons, and then blamed him for starting the apocalypse early, knowing that War would kill everyone and everything in his way in order to clear his name, Abaddon included. The comic ends with War landing on Earth during the apocalypse.
Which is right where Darksiders 1 begins. During the game's prologue, War, unaware of all the machinations going on in the background, descends upon Earth to do his duty in good faith, believing he had heard the call to battle for the apocalypse. Upon arriving, he battles through both angels and demons before encountering Abaddon, who is surprised to see War there since the entire point of the plan had been to avoid having the horsemen present at all. In the ensuing chaos, Abaddon is defeated, and Lilith convinces him to join the side of the demons, since his treachery was now known to the heavens, so he could basically either return home for punishment or become a general of Hell. He chose the evil option. Back on Earth after Abaddon's fall, War found himself stripped of much of his power, the Council's doing, because they're douches, and was subsequently slain. The council returned him to life, blamed him for starting the apocalypse early, dooming humanity in the process, and sentenced War to serve 100 years of imprisonment in the abyss. The rest of Darksiders 1 takes place after this 100-year exile.
This is where the timeline gets a little weird again. Both Darksiders 2 and Darksiders 3 take place sometime during this 100-year period of War's imprisonment. This was confirmed by developers. Developers have also confirmed two other things that were not expressly stated in either game. First, not only do both Darksiders 2 and 3 take place during War's prison stint, they take place at, quote, the same time, unquote. Second, we know that the 7 Deadly Sins, the antagonists and reason for the mission in Darksiders 3, were released 10 years after the apocalypse on Earth began. Technically, this is great and makes the timeline very easy. We have the prologue of Darksiders 1, a 10-year gap, and then both Darksiders 2 and 3 occurring roughly simultaneously. What we don't know is how long it took for either Darksiders 2 or 3 to finish, though both games have a very continuous and rushed feel, so it seems unlikely to us that either game took the entirety of the 90 remaining years of War's imprisonment.
We know Darksiders 2 starts at least a smidgen before Darksiders 3, thanks to this scene at the beginning of Darksiders 3, indicating that Death has already peaced out.
War is in chains. Death is missing. Strife attends to other matters.
So we're going to go over Darksiders 2 first. Death, knowing his brother War to be honorable, doesn't believe for even one iota of a second that War is guilty of prematurely starting the apocalypse. However, he is also aware that nothing he can do will convince the council of this, so instead he sets out to erase the crime of which War has been accused. Death plans to resurrect humanity. Along the way, we, the player base, learn almost everything we know about the history of the Nephilim people, and Death's role in their downfall. Death also discovers that Absalom, the first Nephilim, once slain by Death's own hand, had risen afterward as the source and champion of the corruption, a sort of cancer on the fabric of creation that was slowly eating away at everything, perverting, destroying, and corrupting everything in its path. After a long and for Death increasingly frustrating journey, Death arrives at the Well of Souls, the hub of the death and rebirth cycle for the Darksiders universe. There he fights and destroys Absalom for a second time, and then, with the well presumably cleansed of corruption, Death sacrifices himself and the souls of the Nephilim in order to allow humanity to be reborn anew into the universe. Here we get another weird timeline spot. Again, from our perspective, there's no way that the Darksiders 2 game takes 90 years for Death to complete. However, many believe that Death's sacrifice at the well and the ending of Darksiders 1 occur roughly simultaneously, probably due to this scene here at the end of Darksiders 2.
Thus from death came life, and the seeds of humanity were resown. But Death's journey was not ended. On the shattered earth, his brother War had slain the Destroyer.
Which we admit could be seen that way, and arguably even infers that to be the case, but there's enough leeway in the presentation to keep things from lining up concretely. And again, at least to us, it doesn't make sense that Death's quest took 90 years plus however long War takes to complete his own quest.
Stepping away from that, Darksiders 3 takes place roughly in tandem with Darksiders 2. In the third game, the Charred Council releases the 7 Deadly Sins, personifications of various evils that the 4 Horsemen had imprisoned by order of the Council sometime long before, in order to wreak havoc on the ravaged remains of the Earth. They did this because the Council had reached a point where they considered their Horsemen to be more trouble than they were worth, and wanted to see them eliminated. So, they released the Sins on Earth, a cabal of foes that had previously required all 4 Horsemen to capture, and keeping the fact that they had done it on purpose secret, sent Fury alone to retrieve them, hoping that the 8 of them would destroy each other in the resulting confrontations. Fury starts out as an incredibly angry, arrogant creature, but slowly grows into a wiser and more understanding person due to her battles with the 7 Deadly Sins, many of those encounters forcing her to confront her personal demons and either grow or die. By game's end, she uncovers the plot of the Council, and even learns that they allowed the fall of humanity, partially out of fear for what humanity could eventually become. Fury gains power from a source unattached to the Council, the Sins are defeated, their souls either destroyed or set free during a confrontation with the Council itself, and then Fury takes up the mantle of Guardian of Humanity, ushering the remaining humans to a hidden location, where she presumably waits until the end of Darksiders 1.
Which brings us, finally, to the majority of Darksiders 1. After the prologue and his 100 years imprisonment in the Abyss, War is set loose upon a thoroughly ravaged Earth with the goal of clearing his name. Along the way, the secrets of the plan by Abaddon and company was revealed, along with the fact that Abaddon had taken up the mantle of Destroyer and now led the demons that infested the Earth. War also learns that the Council had allowed him to be the scapegoat for Abaddon's treachery. Knowing War may have balked if he was told to kill Abaddon with no proof, but also knowing that he'd kill Abaddon to clear his own name. War eventually catches up to Abaddon and slays him, clearing his name in the process, and is then betrayed by his Watcher, an emissary of the Council who informed War that no matter the results, it was always intended for War to die on this mission. However, thanks to a vision from the Tree of Knowledge, War had planned for this, and though he was struck dead, he helped ensure that the seventh seal of the Apocalypse was broken. The seventh seal summons the Horsemen to Earth for the Apocalypse, no matter their location, no matter their condition. When the seal was broken, War returned to life. He killed the Watcher, freeing himself of the Council's shackles, and then awaited the arrival of his brothers and sister in arms. Death too was brought back to life for this, Fury would be called back from whatever sanctum she'd hidden humanity away in, and Strife, mystery that his story remains until we get Darksiders 4, would arrive as well. For the first time since knowledge came to them of the Council's treachery, the four Horsemen of the Apocalypse would stand together as one.
And that's basically the story of the Darksiders franchise, or at least what we know of it thus far. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like, and if you know someone who might enjoy it, go ahead and send them our way. If you have ideas for videos you'd like to see us do in the future, do like Azim Johnny, The Lightbringer 666, Razzie Evermescu, and Alpha Peacemaker, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore or let's play, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons, signing off. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like it, hit this subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, go to the link on the left.
And for a video chosen by the gods of YouTube from our channel, hit that link on top.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.